Ableism? What in the world is ableism? And what is a disability activist? I thought brokerage was about black people. Why are we talking about disability in a place where we're supposed to be talking about stuff that affects us? Well, we're going to answer you after the break.
Brokers, welcome to another episode of Broke, where we talk about the unbelievable ish this country is selling to keep us broke. Now here are your hosts, Amber and Erika.
I'm Amber.
And I'm Erika.
And this week, you all, we are talking about disabilities, disability activism, the ways that people in our community, black people, are uniquely affected by being in this world, both as black people and disabled people. And so we have a special guest with us here today to unpack a lot of the things that we often don't talk about when we talk about the broken ish that burdens us and how those burdens are heavier for some people in our community for a variety of reasons. And so hopefully here today, we're going to amplify voices and we're going to shed a new light on how our movement for ourselves needs to be more inclusive and more mindful that each of us are traveling this journey as black people in a very unique way.
So, Amber, before I introduce our guest, who I'm very excited for y'all to meet, tell us, what have you been up to? I know you were going down there to Texas Tech to take your baby. What else have you been up to?
Honestly, I've been working. Like, I really resent the times in my life when my job, like, really try to make me work. Like, and that is a lot for me. And I don't like it.
Wow.
And so,
Wow.
these last few weeks, I mean, I've been working. I'm about to hit the road on a little travel tour. And so, child, it's just too much. Like, to really have the audacity to ask me to work multiple days in a row. That's not right. I am.
You're against it, right?
What you been doing, sis? What you been doing?
I get it. Well, I have been, so I went to homecoming too. Like you were saying you were going to your little school thing. I went to homecoming and, I was out there in those streets. I was very excited about it. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've just been out here in the world trying not to let school get the best of me. That's pretty much it, though. I'm trying to keep it easy. But, Amber, let me tell you this, though. And I think while I'm doing this, I think Leroy might need to refresh his page. But while that is happening, while he is doing that, guess what happened the last time we recorded this show? The last time we recorded this show, after we got done, I listened to it and it was terrible. Like, the sound was so bad, Amber. So I was like, oh my gosh, what happened to the sound? What did I do? Why was I recording the show and the microphone was on the nightstand and I was at the desk, Amber? Like, I did not realize till after we were done.
She always blames me.
And I'm
like, it's in her eyes. It never comes out of her mouth. But whenever we have technological difficulties, there is this energy I feel that is very, very clear that in her mind, low key, it's my fault. And I just want y'all to know, nobody might be keeping score except for me and the good Lord. This is the second time I have been technologically vindicated on this here platform. So I just want y'all to continue to keep the score in Jesus' name. Okay?
But Amber, be fair to me, because I never said, because I didn't know I had a problem last week because I didn't know my microphone was on the nightstand. So I never said that you did anything last week.
She says
I did not accuse you of anything last week.
She says it with her eyes.
Behind the glasses, I'm saying all that.
As somebody who is, deeply spiritual, I'm very sensitive to energy. I can feel it. I can feel it. There is an accusatory energy that flows through this cyber air when we are recording and we have problems. And I just want y'all know it. This is the second time I have been vindicated. So when the word says, hold your peace and let the Lord fight your battles, hold your peace. Because this is proof.
So, Amber, this is the only thing I need from you moving forward. This is what I do need from you. I'm getting a little older, and it's like when my parents leave the house, my stepdad is like, Does everybody have that medicine? Does everybody, the checklist of things, right? All I'm saying is just be like, Erika, is your microphone close to you? Is it pointed towards
I
your
got
mouth?
you.
And let me
I
say
got you,
yes.
sis.
Okay. Just do that for me every
I
time.
got you, sis.
And
I
then
got
we can go on from there.
you. I got
So, y'all, I was talking to Kim Brown from Burn It Down with Kim Brown one day, and I was telling her that I really wanted to have somebody to come onto Brokish to talk about disability advocacy, and activism. And she was like, you guys talk to Leroy. And in the meantime, Leroy was on her show. So watched the show, and I was like, absolutely, we've got to have Leroy on the show. So brokers, I am very excited to introduce to you Leroy Moore. Now, he has a formal bio, so I'm going to read that for you. And it's a lot of stuff. I asked Leroy for his bio, Amber, it was like 4 paragraphs. Like Leroy said, look, I've been in the streets doing things. Okay,
tell her what you're not going to do is edit your bio, okay? So read it.
So he didn't send it over here, so I'm going to read it because Leroy sent it to me.
Okay.
2021 Emmy Award-winning Leroy Moore Jr. is the co-founder of Krip Hop Nation. Since the 90s, Moore has been a key member of Poor magazine, starting with the column Illin' and Chillin', and then as founding member of the magazine school, the Homefulness and Decolonize Academy. Moore is one of the founding members of the National Black Disability Coalition and an activist around police brutality against people with disabilities. Leroy has started and helped start organizations, including Disability Advocates of Minorities organizations. His cultural work includes the film documentary Where is Hope? Police Brutality Against People with Disabilities, spoken word CDs, poetry, books, children's book, Black Disabled Art History 101. His graphic novel, Krip Hop graphic novel issue 1, Brown Disabled Young Women Superhero Brings Disability Justice to Hip Hop, was published in 2019 and 2020. Moore has traveled internationally, networking with other disabled activists and artists. In the fall of 2021, Leroy started his PhD, Lord, in anthropology, but he didn't have enough to do at UCLA. And Moore has written, sang, and collaborated to do music videos on Black disabled men. And in July 2019, Leroy Moore, under Krip Hop Nation, organized African Disabled Musicians San Francisco Bay Area tour with disabled musicians from Uganda and Tanzania and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In 2021, Leroy Moore published a book about Black disabled young men. You can already tell Leroy has won a lot of awards for his advocacy, from the San Francisco Mayor's Disability Council under Willie Brown to the Local Hero Award in 2002 from public television station KQED in San Francisco. And in 2014, San Francisco Bayview newspaper named Leroy Champion of Disabled People in the Media on Black Media Appreciation Night. Y'all, okay, so we are happy to have this acclaimed man, Leroy Moore. Welcome to the show, Leroy.
Hello, thank you for reading that so long bio. I'm so sorry it's so long.
Don't you apologize to us, child. You got an Emmy. Yes.
But look, and Amber and I used to be Baptist, so we appreciate a long introduction. Like, this is a part of what we grew up with. This is no problem at all. But Leroy, I know that we went through that, but if you don't mind, tell the brokers more about, just a little bit about you before we kind of get into the conversation.
Okay, so thank you for having me on, brokers. I'm so glad to be here. So my name is Leroy Moore. I'm really a disabled activist, been an activist since the 80s. I'm also a poet, also the founder of Krip Hop Nation. Is an international network of musicians with disabilities. And yeah, I'm just here living my life.
Well, and it is quite a life that you are living. So what I don't want to do today, Leroy, is I don't want it to be like, I'm coming to have you be the face of disability for all Black people. And, you're going to answer all these questions and it's going to be for every Black disabled person. That's what I don't want to happen. But I'm sure that there are some brokers who are like me, who, you will have to forgive me in advance, just don't know. And so part of this conversation, if you're okay with it, is just us learning more. So more with more. So if you can help us with that part. So if we kind of start at the very beginning, even thinking about the term ableism, what does that mean to you?
So ableism is like racism, sexism. It's just prejudice against people with disabilities. So last year I put Black in front of it, Black ableism, because there's a lot of ableism in the Black community, and because of racism, the disability community is full of racism. So all the goodies that disabled people got, from their law to disability studies to disability culture, never trickle down to the Black community. So unfortunately, the Black community still has the slave masters thinking around disability. It's hush hush, or you collect a check and that's it. So there's no political thought around it. There's no culture. There's no arts. There's just backwards thinking. So for me and Krip Hop, for the last 10 years, I stepped away to educate the full disability community, to really focus on the Black community, because I got this poem saying, when can we come home? Because right now, Black disabled people can't come home to the Black community because of Black ableism, because of the outdated look around disability.
So it's interesting that you say that, we were about coming home, because in thinking about the show, I was thinking about the fact that I have an aunt who is blind. She's been blind for probably 30 years at this point. But the thing about that is that it's not, in her case, can she come home? Because in a lot of times, that's where she is left, right? Like, so it's like, family members may not want to take her out because they feel like it's a burden for them. And I've seen other instances of disabled people sort of being left to wallow at home, as opposed to being brought out into the broader community and sort of just being able to experience life outside of the home. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh God, big time thoughts about that. It's, once again, the Black community is still behind when it comes to disability awareness. So, it's not surprising that, that the attitude is still here. We need to educate, our Black community around Black disabled history. That's why I put that book together, Black Disabled History 101. It talks about, Black blind activists that marched with Martin Luther King back in the day. You had Al Hitler. Al Hitler was a jazz singer, and he was also an activist. So those kind of stories need to be, spoken about for your, siblings and your aunts and uncles, and so they can see that Black disabled people were out there in the streets protesting, and they're still out there in the streets doing their work.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting, the point you brought up about how we mimic a lot of the behavior and a lot of the mindsets that we see in white supremacy within our own community.
Yeah.
And I do think it's important for us to realize that the marketing messaging of oppressive systems, it gets to us too. And we normalize a lot of dysfunctional, oppressive behavior within our own spheres of being, and it's interesting to hear, you talk about all of the things that you've done, or all of the things that you're doing, because I think there are going to be a lot of people who listen to this and feel like you're exceptional in some way. But really, there are Black people who have limitations or disabilities of all kinds who are out here doing things, who are out here living very productive, meaningful lives. But we've been taught to make assumptions and treat them according to those assumptions, as opposed to really pressing into people's humanity and getting to know them on a deeper level. And that's because that's what oppressive systems do. They teach you to replicate that behavior in your own personal ways of being.
Yeah, and it's, it's sad that a lot of Black national organizations have no clue around disability. So the NAACP, the Urban League, all the way up to, even Black Lives Matter. We tried to educate Black Lives Matter in the beginning, and they said no. I was like, how can you say no when
Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, when 70% of all police shootings are people with disabilities, and mostly Black disabled men, So, it just tells you that our national organizations are not listening to us. And even, so-called movements that get popular don't even listen to Black disabled people,
And even with our language, I wonder how you feel about, like, we can be very reductive. Oh, they're crazy, right? Or, oh, it's just something wrong with them. Like, I know I heard that a lot growing up when, we had family members or people that had limitations. It was just, oh, something wrong with her. Just, we can be very reductive about it. I don't think we've been taught how to have this conversation about what it means to be disabled, what that looks like, how that's layered with Blackness and other identities. And so how do you guide people in sort of shedding that reductive thinking and having like more robust conversations?
Yeah, I've been doing workshops and lectures on the college circuit since 1997. I can't believe it's been such a long time. And it's just it's continuing education. That's my life. That's why I do these books. That's why I travel the world. That's why I'm here at UCLA, trying to bring Krip Hop to hip hop, trying to change that language in hip hop. We had Lizzo and we had Beyonce, and it goes deeper than just language,
Right.
Because all of that happened because a white British woman, took it on on Instagram and blew it up. But once again, it's like after all the hoopla, what has changed? Nobody's coming to Krip Hop to think, okay, Leroy, let's do the work together. It's just another post on Facebook, and that's it.
And take the word out the song. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for those of you all who don't know what we're referring to right now, Lizzo and I think Beyonce both had the same offensive word in their songs. And so they both went back to update the song, but it's like, where's the activism after that happens, right? So where's the communication to their platforms? We know they both have huge platforms. That could have been a way for them to do something more. But talking about language, Leroy, can you help us to sort of think about, like Amber was alluding to before, some of the words that we might use in everyday life, like crazy, like lame, like whatever, insert whatever other term. And can you talk to us about why we need to rethink our words, why those things might be offensive?
Yeah, disability language, happens in the 60s and 70s. That's when the parent movements started to happen, and parents, protest to get their children out of special education, where I was locked in the early 70s, and my mother got me out. And, because of the laws, and because of the activism, parents took, took the meaning and flipped the language. It's almost like hip hop. Hip hop takes a negative language and flipped it, and that's what we're doing in Krip Hop. We're taking back Krip as crippled, and we're flipping it and we're using it as an educational tool to have people look and listen. If you take on, Tookie Williams' book, he said that the term Crip came from a disabled, gangbanger. So once again, we're just taking that word back and saying, okay, Tookie, thank you, but that came from people with disabilities. We're going to flip it in hip hop to make it a positive thing. But language is very important, and I think the Black community needs to have an update when it comes to disability. A lot of people in the Black community still use handicap, and handicap is so old. It's like 1970s. Handicap. The word handicap means a hand and a cap. It goes back to begging on the street.
Oh.
Yeah. So, when parents started,
wow.
when parents started that movement, they wanted to change the word to, disabilities. Then when people with disabilities, came in the movement and started organizations, it's like, okay, people with disabilities. So, terminology changes every year. We have the same in the Black community. First we're called the N-word and Negroes and people of color and Black people. So, every minority group, the language change.
Yeah.
So is
I
it your
heard,
feeling? Oh, sorry.
no, I was just going to say, I heard the other day, I was watching a video and a trans woman was talking about people like intentionally misgendering her to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she said was that if nobody's ever corrected you about your use of gendered language, it's probably because they didn't feel comfortable or safe to do it. And so I thought about that as you were talking, like about words like handicap, about words like lame, and how so many of us, kind of have the conversation like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Nobody's ever said anything about that. And I'm wondering, like, when you are having this conversation with people who don't have the same, limitations or disabilities, how do you encourage them or talk to them about being open to receiving the feedback that their language is problematic or certain comments are problematic? Like, how do you have that conversation with people so that they really understand how problematic it is?
Are you checking people in the streets, Leroy? Is the question?
I mean, basically.
God, I try to, I try to flip it. If I'm talking to, a person that is Black, I'm thinking like, can I call you Negro? And they say, oh no, that's 1970s. I'm like, well, that's the same thing with handicap. It's the same thing. It's a different history, and like I said, the Black community don't know that history, so we need to educate, our community. I bring up, Harry Tubman, our ancestor. She had a disability. So you bring up these stories, and people's like, oh, okay. Blues singers were all, not all, but 95% were people with disabilities. So, once you flip the script and you really say that, Black disabled people were in history doing stuff, leading people to freedom is here telling creating the blues. There's one cat brought the KKK to court. I forget his name, but he was a Black disabled reverend. And in North Carolina, matter of fact, I interviewed the church. One of the churches in North Carolina found out that they had graves in the back of the church, and the graves was this family that had a disabled son, and come to find out is like a whole history of him fighting the KKK, and he took the KKK to court. So these stories, these histories, need to be told, and I think that's a way that we can flip the script on Black on our Black community to really uplift and bring them in the 2022 history of people with disabilities.
So before we got on today, Amber and I were talking, and she was sharing a story, and I want her to share her story here, and then maybe get your thoughts about it.
Yeah. So I have chronic illness. I have autoimmune issues, and I have a really good girlfriend from college, Hey Whitney, who is also has a chronic illness that causes her to have to use an oxygen machine. And so the last time we were talking, she made a comment, and she said something like, "People like us who have invisible disabilities." And I kind of paused because I was like, us, like, I kind of, it kind of made me stop and think. And I was like, I mean, like, do I have I guess I always recognize that I have like a chronic illness, like, again, with the problematic language, like growing up, my mom used to say I was sickly, but I didn't really identify as disabled, you know what I mean? And it just kind of, I was telling Erika, I was like, child, she was 5 minutes up the conversation, and I was still there, like, people like us, like, do I have a disability? And it's very interesting because, again, I think that's one of the ways that we replicate white supremacy. Like, we are taught to erase our limitations, erase our weaknesses. I remember in elementary school, the stories they told about President Roosevelt hiding his polio, like how he didn't use his cane in public because he didn't want people to know, as if that was like something to be ashamed of or something, to hide, like it was a problem. And so it just kind of made me think not only about people who have invisible disabilities, but people who are sort of taught to erase their disabilities in that pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of way, like ain't nothing wrong with you, push through it. And even now I struggle with that a lot. Like, my body will be telling me, like, sis, have a seat, rest, and I'm like, no, be strong, fight the weakness, and not really acknowledging, like, I am sick, like I have an issue and I have to be sensitive to my body. And yeah, it is a very difficult struggle to navigate.
Yeah, and if we look at disability as a culture, as a history, as a political lens, I traveled the world. I was in South Africa, I was in the UK, and Krip Hop gets invited to do these, festivals and to do lectures and stuff. And I see, Krip Hop has been around for almost 15 years. And, we had chapters all around Africa. I mean, people with disabilities are kicking butt outside the US with no funding, no money. I mean, Krip Hop was about to buy land in Tanzania. Krip Hop chapter in Tanzania is about to build a school. I mean, all this is happening because we connect. We saw that, okay, you have a disability in Tanzania, I have a disability in LA. We both probably be in, discriminating against, but I have this outlet. Let's come together and let's do something. So once we see disability as more as a political, cultural, international kind of platform, then it's not about I, it's about we.
Yeah. And removing that shame, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a silly question, but I'm really interested in. So for somebody like Amber who has a chronic illness, and there are other people who are identified in the disabled community who are like, no, sis, you one of us. Is it kind of like people who might be biracial, who like, no, y'all are Black. You might not know it, but in the construct of the United States of America, you Black. Like, so does she just define that, or is she automatically a part of the community? I know this is a dumb question, but do you understand what I'm asking?
No, it's not a dumb question. Nothing is a dumb question. No, I mean, she's definitely, a part of the disability community. But the thing is that, yeah, you can be part of the disability community, but what I call, would you go to the extreme and saying, I'm politically, culturally part of the disability community.
Yeah, because I think that is very layered, just like people who are Black but white presenting, and so there is a privilege of having a disability that you can choose to disclose when it's convenient for you, versus people whose disability might be more obviously discernible immediately when you meet them. And I think that issue of sort of solidarity that Erika's bringing up is one of those things that highlights what it means to like you can be privileged in a lot of different seats, it is not just one thing. And so I think that's why it's so important for all of us to like be invested in each other's humanity, because yes, I might be included in the community, but my lived experience and how people interact with me is 100% different than how they interact with somebody else whose disability is more obvious. You know what I mean? And so I think it's very layered,
Yeah.
Can we ask people to mind their MF business
as it relates
to if somebody is using the disabled parking spot, which, Leroy, we're going to have to also talk about why the parking spots are still called handicap. Anyway, somebody is using the disabled parking spot, and then everybody's like, well, it ain't nothing wrong with you. I'm like, y'all mind y'all's business. You don't know who's disabled and who's not disabled. So just mind your business. Don't worry about it, okay?
Yeah,
just don't you park in it if you don't need to.
Oh my God. I can tell you stories and stories how I've been stopped, just going to class or going to the supermarket. I mean, when I moved to LA last year, like the first 5 months in Westwood Village, the first 5 months, every time I was outside, I was stopped by everybody. I mean, people would stop their cars. One time, this guy stopped his car to give me a candy bar.
Oh, wow.
Like, what?
Wow.
And check this out. I had groceries from Whole Foods in my freaking scooter. It's like a candy bar. I just spent $200 at Whole Foods.
Wow.
It's something else. I mean, I can. Yeah, it's something. I mean, people try to give me money, food.
Take the money. Like, when they try to give you the money, they were take the money.
You be like, I go to like a top 20 university. Like I'm internationally known and locally respected. Like,
but take the money though.
Let me give you some money, okay?
Serious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow.
I mean, my nephews and nieces have seen it since they were young, and they keep on shaking their head. It's like, Uncle Leroy
got more money than all of these people.
Oh, wow. So, Leroy, what I didn't ask you to go into a little bit more detail about, and I know we don't have a lot of time left, is, can you tell us more about Krip Hop Nation? Because what I loved about your work is how you're infusing hip hop with disability advocacy. And we all know that hip hop has a lot of problems, right? The misogyny of hip hop, the gangsta talk, all of these things. And so combining this, like how you've been able to do that with Krip Hop Nation, and just more about what Krip Hop Nation is and what you all do.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, it started out, well, it didn't start out, it became a full circle. Back in the 70s, I was downstairs in my father's basement when I was a young boy. And I was looking at his record collection because my father had a huge record collection. I kept on putting out records and they kept on saying, Blind Jake and, Robert Winters that had polio. All these Black disabled musicians. It's like, what is this? It was like a mirror to myself. So, that was in the 70s. And now we're doing Krip Hop. It's like, God, how things become full circle. So, Krip Hop is an international network of hip hop artists and other musicians with disabilities that started in 2005, 2004. And, me, Keith Jones, and the late Rob Denoise Temple, always asks, like, where's, disabled musicians in hip hop? So we got together and it just blew up. It started at a radio station because I was a part of this radio collective, and we did a 3-part series on hip hop and disability. And I came back home, and this was before Facebook, so everything was on MySpace. So my MySpace was blowing up from people from Africa, Spain, Italy. It's like, yeah, let's do this. So we've been doing it ever since. We put out books, we've done lectures, and now what's really big and what's really coming down is that because I'm at UCLA, and UCLA picked me. I was applying for schools. UCLA
They chose me.
Yeah. Yeah, they saw my work. They saw Krip Hop. They're like, oh my God, he's doing the work. He should just get a PhD because he's doing the work. So now that I'm at UCLA, the big goal is to open up a Krip Hop Institute in LA.
Nice.
So little Leroy's and little Lisa can come to this building and see themselves, because I've been in so many museums in New York, but I never saw myself in those places. So that's what we're doing. We're gonna open up this Krip Hop Institute. We're also doing on a channel, and not on YouTube, but our own channel. So we're doing that. So we're doing some big things. Krip Hop is in almost 6 textbooks that are coming out next year. So
that's what's up.
So yes, we're doing it.
That's what's up.
You certainly are. And I know I have more questions. I know and I'm sure Amber probably does too. So I hope, Leroy, we can leave the door open for you to come back and join us on another show and, dig deeper, because I would love to be able to do that.
Oh, but yes.
You haven't told the people where they can find you out here in the internet streets and the socials and everything.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, although I stopped posting because Facebook doesn't like my posts because I don't like the Supreme Court messing with my women, my sisters. So they had put a hold on my posting, so I stopped posting there. But I do read this. So Facebook is Krip Hop Leroy, Twitter, on Instagram, yeah.
And Krip Hop is KRIP.
Yes.
HOP Nation, Nation. So Krip Hop with the Knation.com, at Krip Hop. Is it just at Krip Hop on Twitter? I think it's just at Krip Hop on Twitter. But thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time, for dealing with those issues. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love your work with Black Power Media.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, y'all, Leroy gave y'all the first part of the homework. Y'all need to follow Krip Hop Nation. Y'all need to stay abreast, because all the stuff he's doing not only requires time, it requires money and support.
Oh, yes, it does.
Okay, so we're going to follow Krip Hop Nation so that we can help, especially our babies, see themselves. And then the second one is there is a documentary we're going to post in the receipts called Black Disabled Lives Matter, #Together Apart. And it's about an hour and a half, but it is fantastic. And it's just amplifying the voices of disabled people who are telling their stories and what it's like to be disabled and Black, and how our movement has not always been inclusive. So watch it so we can learn how to be better, because we really are all we got, y'all. We all we got.
And I want to say, watch it, but please don't follow Black Lives Matter. Please, follow Krip Hop, follow other Black disabled people that are doing it. Don't. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And we support that message. Because Black Lives Matter allegedly has stole like $90 million. So
exactly.
Anyway. They didn't steal it. They built a party house. Stop lying, Erika.
Allegedly. So no, I don't think the documentary is.
It's not by them.
Okay.
It's not affiliated with Black Lives Matter.
It's not affiliated with them. They just use the.
Correct.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
But y'all, it can be easy to see certain issues as not your problem. But disability is something that will likely affect all of us. Even if it never does, we should want a nation that sees the humanity and value in every person, regardless of their ability to produce labor. We should have learned from COVID that we are all replaceable in this society. So it makes sense to band together to advocate for a world that is accessible for us all. So let's continue to do that, to advocate, to push for policies that will benefit everyone, even the most vulnerable, especially the most vulnerable. So as Amber just said, and y'all already know, we all we got. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of Brokish.